think we pick up with Shemot or Exodus 23, chapter 23, verse 6. Literally in English, it would say, "Not you shall stretch out, judgment me to you, and strife you." So, of course, we begin with lo, the negative article, no, not, that kind of thing. Ta te, you shall stretch out. Now, we had this word, of course, last week, to stretch out, to extend. If I stretch out my hand to shake your hand, if I stretch out my hand to worship, whatever. But it was also that if I was plotting against you, I was stretching out my hand against you. Or if I was plotting to do something for you, I'm stretching out my hand to do something for you. I hope you remember that. Uh, but remember, this was that one of taking advantage. You know your enemy is about to fall, but now you just really go after them. With way more force than was necessary. So anyway, the next word is mishpat. It's one of my, actually, it's my favorite Hebrew word, at least till we get to the next Hebrew word. Mishpat, they say judgment. Judgment according to what? The Torah, of course. Uh, Use of the act of judging. It's of a place where you do judgment. In a forensic cause, it's to plead someone's case, to be his patron in a Jewish court and before the face of God. It's used as the sentence of a judge. And in English Bibles, it'll talk about judgments of the Lord. But what most people miss is that's an idiomatic phrase. If they say judgment of the Lord, they're saying judgment according to Torah. Because God gave us a Torah, and the Torah lays out what's right, what's wrong, what the penalty is, that sort of thing. So if you're judged if it's the judgment of the Lord, it's a judgment that's according to the Torah. Especially use of a sentence by which penalty is inflicted, according to the Torah, right? Because the Bible's not talking about the American Constitution. It's not talking about the legal system in Europe. It's not talking about a legal system anywhere, in any place, in any religion except Judaism. It's the total scope of it, sum total of it. And it even mentions that every human being is subject to it. Yes, it does. And by the way, that's on both sides of the book if you're a Christian. That's in the New Testament. Look at Romans chapter 7, verse 1. I'm just saying. But every man, as long as he lives, is subject to what? The Torah. It says the law in your book, but what's the law? The Torah. So every man's subject to it. And there's more to God's law than just the Torah. God has this law, it's called gravity. And so if you step out of an airplane at 30,000 feet without a parachute, you're going to learn that the hard way. It's the last thing you probably ever learned, but I'm just saying. So God's law covers that. I mean, physics is God's law. It's not man's law. Man's here, we discovered some things, but those are laws that God gave us. Those are not laws that we live by, but they are laws that may affect our lives, right? Because, like I said, jump out of an airplane without a parachute. I'm just saying. So they do affect your life, whether you like it or not, whether you believe in God or not. God's laws are going to affect you, right? Just as his law that he put in writing is going to affect you. If you do somebody wrong, people like to say, what comes around goes around, or goes around comes around, however that goes, right? Well, the Bible puts it differently, correct? What you put out, you get. What's that? I can't think of the way that says it now. As do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, same thing, right? Um, so this is there's a lot here about the law, but the thing that you have to keep in mind, you absolutely have to know, this is the Torah we're reading, this is the Torah we're studying, this is going to always be based on the Torah. That is the law. The Constitution is the law of the land in the United States. Unbelievably, to me, most people don't know that. But the law of mankind is called the Torah. You're affected by it whether you believe it or not. Whether you live it or not, you're affected by it. Just saying. So, might want to learn some of it. Then the next word is Evioncha. And so, of course, the Evyon is the needy, the poor among you, the people who are oppressed and wretched, and especially the ones who suffer undeservedly were called needy. I mean, you could be rich, and if you were being persecuted undeservedly, they would call you needy in the Bible. Just saying. It doesn't always have something to do with money, but generally it does. When we're talking of the poor, there is a lack thereof. So we're talking about your poor, because your poor. Then our next word is the ribo in strife, literally in his strife, his contention. So what have I said? What's the translation? And by the way, there was an idiom here. You shall not pervert judgment from your adversary in his strife, right? So they're using it idiomatically. What does it mean? In his lawsuit. You shall not pervert judgment from your adversary in his lawsuit. Of the words pervert judgment, the Sephorno said the meaning was not to show favoritism for one party over the other. But the text doesn't support the Sephorno. Sorry. Pseudo argued convincingly that the word evyoncha should not be translated as your needy, since it is from the noun be, or the, or yet be, which denotes an adversary. Realizing the root of this word also explains why evyon ended with the pronomial suffix. Did I say that right? Pronomial? Okay. that, that may be the first time I've ever spoken that one out loud. Anyway, realizing that getting the right root is what I'm trying to say. When you realize that, you understand why the pronominal suffix ha, the second person ha, because that's incorrect. Using this evyon ha, that's incorrect if we follow the wrong meaning. If we follow the right meaning, then it becomes clear what it was supposed to say, right? So now we can clearly see the association of these three verses. Going back to when we first started them, remember, it looks like they're out of place. And some of the sages said they were out of place. And a lot of people have written over the years about how they are out of place, but they are not out of place because, what's the word? Chronological order did not exist in biblical Hebrew. It wasn't there. So we got to stop looking for it. They didn't do things in chronological order. The truth be known, nobody does anything in chronological order. You start telling a story, at some point you're going to jump out of the chronology and jump somewhere else because you're going to realize your listener is no way their listener is going to know what you're about to talk about. So you jump out of the chronology, you grab something, you explain something, you jump back into the chronology. That's kind of what's going on in the Bible. It does it all over the place because the concept of chronology did not exist in their world. Not an Eastern thing. All right. In other words, speaking of these three, your enemy, one who hates you, your adversary. Your enemy, one who hates you, your adversary. Three things here, three verses. And now the meaning should be perfectly clear in the Hebrew text for the reason of the connection. It was to drive home the idea that justice is for all men, not just ones we like and get along with. That's why they broke it down to enemy, one who hates you, and your adversary, someone who's against you for whatever reason. Maybe they're against you just because in this lawsuit, they believe that in one thing and you believe in another, but otherwise, you both know when you leave this place, you're going to be friends, right? It doesn't mean that just because they're against you in this, that they're your enemy. It doesn't mean that just because you're in this, they are against you. So it lays out the three things. And the reason why they do it is not because there's a Trinity. It's not because there has to be 3 bullet points. They did it 3 times to show us that this is for all men, not just the ones we like. That's why, that's the association. Okay, so let's move on to verse 7. Literally in English, from word, deceptive you shall distance, and innocent and righteous not shall destroy, for not I will justify wicked. All right, so it starts out me devar. So it's from word, speech, discourse. It's a promise, something that's promised, a precept, an edict, a royal mandate, a saying, a sentence. See, a word, uh, the whole Torah in a single word, and just call it the Torah. Does that mean that since you know it's called the Torah, you don't have to live by it because you can put it in one word? No, that's ridiculous, right? Okay, so if I could sum up the whole Torah in 2 sentences, you know, I can't remember the two that were used in the New Testament, but one of them was you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And I forget what the other one was, but there's two of them that they say on these two words, it's 2 sentences, right? So the whole sentence becomes a word. On these 2 words hang all the law and the prophets. So the whole Tanakh, which we know as the Jewish Bible, right? Because that's the Torah, it's the law, the prophets, and in this case, they would be including the major and the minor, right? So does that mean that if you know those 2 sentences, or if you live by whatever those 2 sentences say, that you don't have to live by any of the rest of the Torah? Because that's what the Christian world has taken that to mean. No, it does not. No, it means that it's just like if I live my life where no matter what happens, you know good and well that I'm going to be, if I say I'm a carpenter and I do small jobs, I come over and I fix doors or I fix windows or I fix little things on your patio and all that. And everybody in town knows that if Robert says he'll be there at noon, you know that he's going to be there 15 minutes till noon. And every single time, everything that I do, everybody knows that no matter what happens, I'm going to be there 15 minutes early. You could sum up my whole life in that one word. Robert's always 15 minutes early. Well, does that mean that there's never been a time that I wasn't 15 minutes early? No. It's just that that's what I'm known as, the punctual guy, right? And you can sum up my life as Robert the punctual guy. Or maybe I hang a door better than anybody else in the whole world. And everybody knows, boy, nobody hangs a door like Robert. And you can sum up Robert's life as, man, he's a world's greatest door hanger. Does that mean that's the only thing I do? Well, now wait a minute. When I started out, I hung doors and windows, right? No. A word can be a single word. Of course it can. But in Hebrew, a word can be a sentence. A word can be an entire book, an entire chapter, an entire book, right? That's what I want you to understand about it when they start talking about a word. We need to understand it in that. So if we talk about the Torah, we could call that the Word of God, but that doesn't mean it doesn't mean we leave out the prophets and the Psalms and all of that. We don't leave all that out just because we call that the Word of God, because any part of it can be called the Word of God. All of it together can be called the Word of God, if you follow what I'm saying. So this is what they mean by this. And in this word, this Torah, you're going to find plenty of precepts and edicts and royal mandates. I mean, they're coming from God. There's no more royalty than that, right? Okay. We follow that with sheker, which is deception, a lie, a lying witness, to be perjured, to be a false prophet. All right, then that's tirchat, you shall distance. Yeah, you should distance yourself from liars. That's a good thing. Distance yourself from lies and liars. I'm just saying. It's to go far away, to recede from anyone. The primary sense is to thrust away. This is the word that they use at Sinai when the Jews were all around Sinai or Sinai, as most people know it, and the cloud was above it, and there was the lightning and the thunder and the blowing of the horns, and they all just kept getting further, further away, because it was scaring them, right? And anyway, so it was a terrifying thing, and they were thrusting themselves away from it, because some of them turned tail and ran, right? Okay, because that's really the idea there. The naki, and innocent, that's pure, metaphorically innocent, free from blame, pure of hands, uh, clear, free from incurring blame. Anyway, you're innocent. It's exactly what we mean by our word innocent in English. Bezadik, starts with the wrong word, and righteous. Let's talk about righteous, because it's used in different ways, you understand. Generally, to be righteous is used of a judge or a king who maintains the right and dispenses justice. But remember, this is the Jewish Bible. This is the Jewish language. This is the Jewish religion. So when they start talking about judges and kings dispensing what is right, it's always according to the Torah. That's the line that's drawn. That's the standard that's laid. The fences that are built, the path that we're on, and everything is based on it. Everything surrounds it. It is the center of the Jewish universe. Oh no, God, no. God is the universe. The Torah is the center of it. It's the heart of God. Oh, I wish everybody knew that. But anyway, so generally when you're talking about righteous and righteousness, you are talking about Torah observance. The biblical Hebrews ascribed to a just man, a man who lives according to the laws contained within the Torah. So they ascribe to him benignity and liberality, not like the liberals on the left in America. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about you're a generous person and that sort of thing. Temperance and sobriety and eating, and you're on an even keel, so to speak. The Bible text only refers to Torah observant as righteous. All others are called unrighteous. Sometimes it's translated sinner or whatever, but only the people who live according to the Torah, live according to God's law, they're the only ones in the biblical text who were ever called righteous. All right. But in a legal sense, when they're using the word in a legal sense, that changes up a little bit, and I'll let Rashi or whoever tell us that here in a minute. It's followed by the word all, which is the negative article. It's like the word lo that's the negative article. Remember, they use these words just to break up monotony. It has nothing to do with some bullet point or some hidden secret or some super spiritual thing that you need to dig out of there. No, it's just writing style. Then it says, taharod shall destroy. It's to kill used of persons, but used not only of private homicide, but more frequently it's used of the slaughter of enemies in a war. That's generally the word. It's of any slaying by the sword. Someone died by that sword, or they were hit with a stone or something like that. It's applied to pestilence because it slays the people. It's applied to vipers because their bite can kill and that sort of thing. Generally, the viper killing animals, though. All right, so then the next word is key, which means for, because, and now we have lo, the negative article, and again, not a bullet point. They're just changing them up because of the monotony. Then it says zadik. Sound like the other word? It ought to. I will justify, because they've added an olive to the beginning of it, so that means I will. It's always I will. You add that to the front of whatever you're saying, if you want to understand it in English. It's to be right, to be straight, of a straight way or path. Of course, again, that's going to be the Torah. to be true, sincere, whatever suitable, to have a just cause. It's opposite to having an unjust cause, to speak the truth, what is right amongst disputants. Because remember, we're in a legal, in a place talking about a legal, about a lawsuit. You know what to say there. Okay, so then we move to Rasha, which is wicked, uh, unrighteous, or shall we say non-Torah observant. Having an unrighteous cause, a cause that is contrary to the Torah. It's all going to come down to what is its place as connected with the Torah. Is it for it? Is it against it? Is it in line with it? Is it out of line with it? It will always come down to Torah. All right, so the translation of verse 7 is, you shall distance yourself from deceptive words, and you shall not destroy the innocent and the righteous, for I will not justify wickedness. Of the words, distance yourself from deceptive words, even Ezra said that this meant that a judge should not grieve or should not give a false judgment. Okay. The Sephoros said that the judge should not allow testimony that would prompt a witness to distort the evidence. I don't know where that comes from. Rashbam said that this somehow meant that if a case was too complicated and the witnesses were sketchy but difficult to contradict, the judge should excuse himself from the case. Oy, oy, oy. The innocent and the righteous. Rashi wrote that it is because of these words that if new evidence is found, a person can be retried. He also said that once a person is acquitted, his case can never again be tried. That's double jeopardy. And he's right about this. This is actually where the American idea of double jeopardy comes from, this very verse. Even Ezra said that these words teach us that we cannot take a man's past crimes into consideration in a new trial. He also said that a judge should not condemn a person even if he thinks he is ridding society of an undesirable person. Well, I mean, these guys are really going out on some very, very thin ice here, trying to make something make sense. I don't really follow why they're going down these roads, but they're not. I wouldn't say they're wrong, but I think you're just really stretching here in most of this, because to say that you can't take a man's past crimes into consideration, no, the text doesn't support that. But I agree with him when he says a judge shouldn't give somebody a guilty sentence because he thinks he's ridden society of something bad. No, a judge should never do that. But how can you get that from this text? It's just beyond me. I know there are people out there saying, oh, that's because you're stupid. Oh, okay. I can accept that. All right, of the words, I will not justify wickedness, Rashi believed that if a man escaped punishment via a court of law, God would take care of the guilty person in some fashion or form. I agree with that. I don't know what it has to do with the sentence, but I do agree with what he said. I don't think that anybody's going to get away with anything, no matter who it is. Or, I saw a guy get away with being just a horrible, horrible human being, ripping everybody off that ever crossed his path. And just year in and year out, he got richer and richer and richer. And everybody else got poorer and poorer and poorer. And what, 40 years after I knew him, he finally got this. It's just like, wow, that sure took a long time. And backing up, I was thinking that the sages were going to say something about it, and so I held off saying something. You guys remember which word that was? Thought I'd back up and look and see what that was. Darn, I don't remember what that was. Sorry. Anyway, I'll move on to the next verse. You guys have to bear with me. The computer's my computer is trying to force me to do some things I don't want to do. I have to figure out how to turn that off. Okay, so we do have time. Verse 8. Literally in English, a bribe not you shall take, for the bribe he incites clear-sighted, and he pervert words righteous ones. So it starts off, Veshohad, which is, and bribe, not bride, bribe, a present, a gift, especially one to free from punishment. You know, a gift you give so that you can get out of your punishment. Or to corrupt a judge, to take a reward. It's a bribe. It's exactly what you think of when you say the word bribe. So then it says lo, tikach. So you will not take a bribe. It's that simple. Then it says ki ha-shohat. For the bribe, I'm still wanting to say bride. I have no idea why. Bribe, B-R-I-B-E. The bribe, the present, the gift. For the bribe, ya'aver. It incites. It's to be hot, ardent, to awaken, to put you on edge. I don't know. There's some words in there I don't really want to say on video, but the bribe itself, it says it incites pikim, clear-sighted, open-eyed, seeing. It's opposite to being blind. It incites the sight. Be saleh, and it perverts, it overturns, it causes to slip or fall away, I don't know. Then it says di-re. Remember the word divar? This is the same word, the speeches, the discourses. So the bribe incites the clear-sighted to slip away from what? The words. The sayings of what? Zadikim. It causes the words of righteousness to slip away. The judgments, the precepts, the royal mandates. So here's your translation. You shall not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the vigilant and perverts the words of the righteous ones. Of the words not take a bribe, Rashi felt that a judge should not take a bribe, even if he intended to make a righteous judgment. Okay, that's good advice. The vigilant ones, those with sight. Rashi believed that no matter how much knowledge a man has of the Torah, their mind will be confused and their learning forgotten, which is to say their vision becomes obscured. That's exactly what this sentence just said. It's like saying it in a completely different way, but it's nailing it right on the head. This is exactly what it means. No matter how much knowledge a judge has, no matter how righteous he's been and how right he can get it, because that bribe incites those eyes in the way that it incites them to blindness, it causes the righteous words of the Torah to be perverted, causes it to be taken away, to be obscured. So, boy, it's a really good explanation on his part. Even Ezra wrote that the word righteous was to be used in a forensic sense. In other words, the winning party in a lawsuit. There it is. I thought that was in there. I couldn't remember it. And he's right about this. So since we're talking about a matter of law, we are talking about a lawsuit here. These laws are all concerning a lawsuit so far. When they talk about the righteous here, they're not talking about one being more Torah observant than the other. That's not it. the assumption here is that they're both Torah observant, but even the Torah observant can clash at times, and so they wind up in court. And it doesn't matter in this case. One guy may be more Torah observant than the other. Their observance level is not in question here. They don't win or lose according to their observance. I don't win a court case just because I live to the nth degree the Torah in my life, and this guy over here only shows up on Saturday morning once or twice a year. No, it's not about how we live our lives. It's generally assumed in these laws that we're both doing our best to live according to God's law, living in His land and in His world, wherever that happens to be for us. But the righteous party here, then, it's not about being Torah observant. It's about that's the winner of the case. It doesn't necessarily mean that he was more right than the other person. It just simply means that he won the case. And if he won it according to the Torah, it still doesn't mean that he's more right than the other. I wish I could think of an example, but I'm just going to have to leave it at that for now. Moving on to 9. In English, it's, and stranger not you shall oppress, and them know them, sold the stranger, for strangers or you in land Mitzrayim, which of course is Egypt. So then it says, the ger, and stranger, a sojourner, a temporary visitor, stranger, foreigner, a person living out of his own country, of foreign shepherds and nomadic tribes wandering about with their flocks in the land. And by the way, the Septuagint, when it translated this verse, it used the word proselutos. You hear proselyte? Yeah, it's where the word comes from. So they're saying that it's a proselyte. I think in today's world, that's all it can be. But back then, not so much. Back then, they had a land, it was called Israel. It had all these borders, and it was governed literally by God's law. It wasn't always followed the way it should have been, but it was, their constitution was the Torah. Think about that. In Israel, in the biblical time of David particularly, their constitution was the Torah. So when other people came in, those people had to live according to those laws. This is the problem that America's having right now, is that they want to let everybody come in and live by their own laws and not live by American law. Well, they got away with it in Europe, and look how great that worked out for Europe. And for some reason, we think we'll do it better here. No. When you go to somebody else's land, you're supposed to live by the law of that land. That's why I never feel sorry for people who go over to other, foreign countries and break their laws and then give these boohoo sob stories about, oh, it's not fair, I shouldn't be in jail. Yeah, you should. You broke their law. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for that. Now, when they're in jail having not broken their laws, which is a real problem in Iran, they just go and grab you and stick you in jail and torture you and say that you committed some crime that you didn't. North Korea does the same thing. That's different. You feel for those people. But for people who go over to foreign countries and to get cheap drugs or whatever over there where it's against the law and the penalty is life sentence in prison or something like that. Hey, you took that chance. You decided to do that. You pay the price for that. So I don't feel sorry for people like that. But they had a world. They had their own land. They had a nation, and in that nation, it had a constitution, and that constitution laid out laws. And so when people came from other nations, they lived by those laws. So this is the connection that's being made here. It's not a proselyte like what we would think of today, because today, if someone's going to live in the land of Israel, we're going to have to live in the spiritual land of Israel, because they have a nation now, but they only have a small piece of it, and the Arabs or the Arab world is trying to force them to give up what they do have. And they say, oh, it's because for religious reasons, this is where our God, his prophet left the earth and it should be ours and we need him off our most holy place. And yet, that comes out of the right side of the mouth and out of the left side of the mouth. We're going to blow it up and kill them all and destroy it all. Wait a minute. If it's so important to you that you want them gone because it's your holy place, why are you threatening to blow it up? That don't make any sense. So it's different because they don't actually have their land back. And by the way, America had a big part in forcing Moshe Dayan into giving that back. If Moshe Dayan would have stood his ground like he should have and said, no, we're not giving half this Temple Mount back to anybody. We're not giving any land that we just won back to anybody. If he would have stood his ground and America and Europe would have stood behind him like they should have, things would be really different right now. The whole Arab Spring probably wouldn't have taken place. This is caused by politics, pure and simple. And they got in there and did something that is against God's law. God does not allow anyone to take land from Israel. He doesn't allow Israel to give up land for peace. It doesn't work anyway. The Muslim religion is such that it actually says in writing, if you give up land, it's a sign of weakness. And then there's another law that says that if you see a sign of weakness, then you're supposed to attack. Why do you think every time Israel signs, a new deal to give up land for peace, the very first thing that happens is they start shooting rockets at Israel? It's what their Bible tells them to do. I don't know why our presidents don't know this simple fact. They gotta know. They gotta have people around them that know this. Politics. It's always politics. So, back in this time, the ger, the stranger, could have been anybody. Could have been Italian, could have been, probably wouldn't have been American Indian. It's a bit of a boat ride back in those days. No one knew the place was there at the time, but I'm just saying it could have been anybody that's living in their land. They're living according to their laws. Nowadays, the only ones who want to live according to God's laws are basically going to be the proselytes, the Jews and the proselytes. You follow? I hope that makes some sense. Then you have the negative article, then that's followed by tilchatz. You shall oppress. So you shall not oppress, press down, to squeeze, to afflict the people, make it hard on them. Then it says ve'atem, and them, yedatem. Literally, that means know them. And this is from yada, it's to see, hence to perceive, to acquire knowledge, to be acquainted with someone, to know them by sight and by touch and by feel. You shake their hand, you embrace them. Then it says et nefesh, and nefesh is the soul. It's the part of you that lives on after you die, the part that breathes in the air, right? And by the way, and I know I've said this before, but I'll probably say it every chance I get. In the Hebrew world, in the Bible world, the soul, the spirit, and the mind are all exactly the same thing. It's not three different things. It's not three bullet points for you to break down. You look up the three different words and get all the different meanings for each of them. You separate them out and you make everybody understand. If your heart says yes and your mind says no, you are suffering from schizophrenia in the Bible world. Because the heart, the soul, the strength, the mind, all of those are the same thing. They're the nefesh. They can be called the ruach. It means exactly the same thing, just another word for the same exact thing. It's not two different things. Remember, they use the different words to break up the monotony. They don't use the different words to have bullet points. That didn't exist in their world. So this is the part of you, this is the real you, the part that lives on. And that's all they mean by that. Then it says, Hager, the very soul of you is a stranger, is a proselyte, is a foreigner. Then it says, Ki, because Gerim, that's the same word, Ger, stranger, sojourner, proselyte, Hegitin, for you were strangers. It's the very heart of the Jew. They're the one that never really fit in. They're the outcast, the outsider. That's the very heart of the Jew. Because that's what you were. The Eretz, in the land of Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt. So your translation of verse 9 is, and you shall not oppress the stranger, and you know the soul of the stranger, because you were strangers in the land of, I'll say, Egypt. Not oppress the stranger. Rashi believed that a stranger that was maltreated was likely to go back to his idol worshiping ways. You could say that about anybody from any religion. The soul of the stranger. Rashi believed that the stranger felt oppression more severely than the native. I don't believe that. I think he's completely backwards on that. Because if I learned anything from Christianity as a kid, was you had greater expectations of the Christians than you did of anyone else. So the one who could hurt you the most was the Christian, not the non-Christian. So the stranger coming in, you doing them wrong, it wasn't, they didn't feel more pain than somebody else. Any pain that they would have felt would have been from you doing them wrong. Even Ezra felt that this law was for judges in a court proceeding and nowhere else, because so far we've been all about the court proceeding. And he has some merit here. I don't agree with it because I think that it's more broad than that. But there is merit here because the whole thing has been about a court proceeding so far. I just think that if you limit this thing to a court proceeding, you miss the bigger picture. Because we stepped out of the courtroom the moment we went to you were strangers in the land of Mitzrayim. Okay. So the previous verses were concerned with the laws that are imposed at all times. The following verses are concerned with the laws that are applied at specific times. So we are going to change it up a bit. So verse 10, it says, "In 6 years you shall sow, land you, and gather you crop." All right, sounds straightforward enough, right? The shesh and 6. Shanim, those are years. Shana is a year. Shanim, years in plural. Tizra, you shall sow. To scatter, to disperse, especially to scatter seed. To sow, it's exactly what you think it is. You till the ground, you scatter the seed, right? You sow. Et, which is just a pointer. Literally, I always just draw an arrow because it's a word that has no meaning, right? But it points to something. Zeha, land you. So you're going to sow your land, the ground that you stand on, your ground. This is the asakta. And of course, you'll gather. I mean, if you plant seed, probably you're going to gather something up. So you're going to, however it's gathered up, if you plant carrots, and let's think back then, you're going to be down on the ground pulling carrots out of the ground. If you planted potatoes, you're going to be digging up the ground to get them out from under the ground, right? Because you have to dig potatoes. Remember, I'm talking way back when. I don't know how they do it now. Could be some machine for all I know, but back then, you had to dig holes. I mean, when I was a kid, we used to glean people's fields, and for our food. I mean, we almost lived the Bible when I was a kid, but you literally had to dig into the ground and find the potatoes. And once in a while, you'd find a big whopper of a potato. Boy, that was exciting in those days. That actually was fun as a kid. What little boy doesn't like digging in the dirt, right? So however you do it, other things are going to be harvested in different ways. Trees, you'll shake them, that sort of thing. But so you're going to plant and you're going to reap, or reap, sow and reap. Tevuata, your crop, the thing that comes up out of the ground. Because even a tree that's full of apples, the tree came up out of the ground, didn't it? So ultimately, the apple came up and out of the ground. So anyway, you're going to do this 6 years, and you will sow and gather the crop in your land for 6 years. Simple, right? All right, we should have enough time for this one. It's a little long, but I think we can get through it. Verse 11. And the 7th you shall rest and forsake you, and eat they poor ones people you, and leave them shall eat living the field, so shall make to vineyard you, to olive you. It'll make sense. There should be eat, and the 7th. So it's a continuation of the verse. It's not like, it's really not another verse. It's broken up as another verse. It's really a continuation of the same sentence. So, and in the 7th, so in the 6 years, you're going to plant, and you're going to, reap that harvest. Then in the 7th, Tish Metena, you shall rest. It's to smite, to strike, also to cast, to throw down. You're going to throw down your tools. You're going to throw down your hoe and your whatever it is, right? You're going to throw it down. You're not going to use your tools. I'm just throwing the tools part in there. It doesn't say that, but you're going to desist from the work. Obviously, that's what we're talking about. Unetashta, and forsake you. That's to send it away. To leave it, to forsake it, to desert it. So you've thrown it down, and you're going to walk away from it. So it's kind of like you're going to throw your field down and you just walk away from it, right? The achlu, and eat they. Somebody's going to eat. They're going to devour something. It hasn't said yet. Evyone, poor ones. The poor are going to eat. The needy, the ones who can't really can't make it on their own. They need some help. This is how you're going to help them. That 7th year, whatever grows out of that ground, and you're not going to plant anything, but whatever comes up out of that ground, and there's always, if you've planted for 6 years and harvested for 6 years and let it go, there's going to be residual. There's something that's going to grow up that next year. And it's saying that's for the poor people. Amecha, the people among you, the poor people among you. Then it says, they run and leave them. Going to leave, that's all it really means. Tohal, that means shall eat. Hayat. Okay, so you're going to leave your field. And the poor among you are going to go, and whatever they find, they're going to eat. Whatever they glean, they're going to eat. And then whatever they don't eat, the animals of the field are called literally the living in the Bible. So whatever animals hasade of the field, whatever's left, the animals of the field will take that too. So it's provision for the needy, and it's provision for whatever animal happens to be out there and wants to eat it. Pretty awesome when you think about it. Then it says, Ken, so, S-O, that's what it means, so, ta'aseh, shall make, it's to do something, it's of labor, that kind of thing. Kasuto argued that Ken ta'aseh was a common formula in the legal language of Israel. I absolutely agree with this, and since we're talking about legality here, all this stuff is about lawsuits and that sort of thing. We're in the laws themselves and that sort of thing. He's just saying this is a legal terminology, and so don't read too much into this. This is lechanacha, to the vineyard you. You'll do this to your vineyard, lezetaha, and to your olive trees. So here's your translation of verse 11. But in the seventh, it doesn't say year, but it's implying it here because you should connect it to the previous verse. But in the seventh year, you shall rest and forsake it, your crop, your field, that the poor ones among your people may eat. And what they leave shall be for the beasts of the field. You shall do likewise to your vineyard and to your olives. And again, these are just the three things and nothing else counts. No, they've said three things to tell you that it's everything. No matter what it is, it's included. We've given you three examples. That should be enough. So of the word seventh, as in seventh year, Onkelos, Shemot, by Drazin Wagner adds, from the time you begin working your field. I agree with this because there's not a particular seventh year that is the year that every piece of land in Israel is supposed to be unattended. It would have happened that way. Why? Because they all got into Israel at the exact same time. The place was started at the exact same time. So it basically everybody would have had an empty field at the exact same time. That's really not what it says and not what's intended. If you get your land like we did 4 years ago, and we started planting, fruit trees and stuff like that back then, which we've still not eaten from. This next season we will. And then in the seventh year, we will rest our land. I will not plant my tomatoes as normal, because that's exactly what's being said here. Of the words rest and forsake, Rashbam felt that the first verb meant that the land could not be plowed, and the second meant that that should be food, that the food that grew could not be eaten. Yeah. Nachmanides felt that the prohibition was limited to hoeing and planting, thus all other agricultural operations were allowable. Okay, but how will poor people and animals eat that which grows in the field if we turn the field under? Just throwing that out there, Rashbam, or Nachmanides rather. The poor, the beast of the field. Rashi said that the rabbis, based on these words, believed that just as the animals eat without paying tithe on a sabbatical year, so should the poor. Okay, but how do we collect tithes from the animals on the other years? That is one ridiculous argument. And I'm going to stop with that one because it's so funny. Shalom, shalom, y'all.